I started teaching back in 2010 and wanted to use 3D workshop as a classroom. I'm pushing this idea of making as a kind of a learning method. It's about thinking through your hand, not from your brain. And actually, you play with the materials, you handling the materials, come up with the ideas, or like you need to trust the material, and the material guide you through. My name is Takeshi Hayatsu. I'm an architect, and I teach at Kingston University. The first one we built is the wooden bridge, and that was a scale replica of one of the arches from the Kintai-kyo Bridge in Iwakuni in Japan, and also the design buildings that really don't consider gravity. And I wanted them to really understand the kind of a weight of the materials and the physical constraints, like wind and rains, and obviously sort of the gravity. And so that you can only really learn from actually building stuff. Because I'm from Japan originally, that somehow the distance somehow kind of made me to go back to learn more about Japanese architecture. So that was one of the rich architecture, more kind of a tangible, physical way. There was 26 of us altogether, including me and teaching partner Tim Goff and students. So the requirement was, all of us can stand on the bridge. Continued on basically this idea of a replica of historic buildings. We looked at the British architecture was the cathedral spire in Salisbury. Maneuvering the big piece of timber or anything, is a really hard thing to do. So also at the time, workshop didn't have a big build space, so we have to walk around kind of a quite confined workshop space. Although it was, it was amazing workshop, but still spatially it's quite challenging. Architecture, in my mind, is a product of limitations. That you have limited resources, you have limited labor, or you have basically you have to make something from the limitations that make best out of it.
Takeshi taught me for 2 years during my master's. That sort of had a large impact on me and some of the others from One-to-One Collective in how we sort of perceived architecture or the practice of architecture. It was trying to find a way to use storytelling as a way to sort of make architecture really accessible.
What I love is his eternal curiosity. The way we would try and unpick things with students was to try and find the story or the essence of what makes a student's idea unique.
And Takeshi's unit was just something I'd never seen before. Thinking through making through doing.
There's something quite surreal about the process, resourceful, like anything could be seen as an opportunity.
If you create stuff, even if you weren't happy with it, it can spark discussion. So even now in work, when maybe I'm stuck, I'll just try something, and a lot of the time it works out, and I think that's the way.
And going to Japan and seeing some of those temples that have lasted for almost thousands of years completely in timber kind of really makes you realize that actually if a building is cared for properly and maintained properly, then it can stand for many, many years, even if it is made by someone.
So his philosophy, I would say, if I was, there is something Robinson Crusoe, but it's kind of
I see Takeshi's teaching and his kind of practicing philosophy intertwined, but I also see them separately. I see his philosophy as something that really kind of allows students to find their personal interest within the kind of architectural world.
I think Takeshi teaches you just to do like a sketch and a sketch and a model and a model, and you just keep going until you maybe get somewhere where you're happy with it, and it's probably an entirely different direction than you initially thought.
So temple was one of those, probably the most ambitious attempt. You know, we made a component over 3,000 pieces, like a really sort of intricate, to some extent, yeah, quite complex building project. We replicated 12th century wooden gate in Nara. It's called Todaiji Nandaimon. Person I admire most is this Japanese architect historian Terunobu Fujimori. He's very big influence on my work and thinking. And I got the funding from Daiwa Foundation to invite him to Kingston to do some collaboration. Contacted him, and then we were going to do some project with him to build this pavilion together, seminar house pavilion in Dorichi House again. We built with my students. So he came over to the UK and he taught us how to do yakisugi, which is a charred timber traditional Japanese technique. We ran sort of symposium as well with him and invited guests and held in the Dorichi House Museum. Through that, Fujimori got commission from Barbican as a big exhibition about Japanese house, seminar house pavilion. He saw me doing with my students, and he saw the facilities in the Kingston University that he thought, okay, they can build my tea house here. Went to Japan with my students to learn about carpentry. So visited a series of tea house that Fujimori built. He prefabricated in the workshop as well. Like we have to build very quietly because students are studying in the library. But we said, shh, we can't talk. But we're making such a big noise, like banging things. It was all successful, and we just discussed with Fujimori how to finish it off and tested everything. It was also interesting that we get involved in other department, not just architecture. My teaching is really sort of focusing on locality. All my projects set up in my studio is about Kingston. And through this, we met Robin Hutchinson. He's the leader of the community Brain.
It was founded in 2010 on a very simple principle that everybody is brilliant if they're given the help and support to be brilliant. So we wanted, in our language, to create playgrounds for adults, spaces, places, activities that allow people to reconnect with their inner child, and also to remind them that they impact on others and with others, and actually if we could do something that brought them together in activity, where they smile particularly, you've got an opportunity of change. And we have had so many people whose lives have changed because they've got engaged, involved with our activities or our projects. It's about people saying, I'm going to pursue my dream.
So I proposed to Robin, look, we want to build this kind of a mobile float for your season festival. Can we join that?
The yatai was one of the most beautiful manifestations of that process of engagement, because the students first of all had to get to understand what the Seething Festival was about and the spirit of it. That sits with the philosophy of the whole festival, resulted in the yatai, which then had this beautiful element of the planted milk bottles and the reuse and repurpose of that, and then the dragging of it from one space to another space. Farah, as part of her work, had come forward with this candle maker's story.
We built this tower lantern structure. We erected this tower in the middle of the market square. At dusk, it became really beautiful because everything went dark and this structure was suddenly lit up and everyone could hang their own lanterns.
I've been doing a number of projects, and Community Brain had, and through it we'd met this beautiful man called Jim Reed, who's an architect. Jim sort of said, I think Unit 5 should get involved and allied with some of the stuff you're doing. And at that point we were just starting our ShedX project. And the shed inside it had the artwork and drawings of the students, but it also had oral histories from people on the allotment talking about what they valued about having a garden and the friendship. Just showed Takeshi's approach to architecture, which was more about people than it ever was about buildings.
I just believe that the role of the architect expands beyond the borders of just the buildings themselves, but actually includes the sort of all the elements that come in between within our kind of built fabric.
With Takeshi's philosophy, there is an element of regenerative design that somehow comes through, that through the curiosity and the resourcefulness, and sticking with something, working from the inside out, having a nucleus. And it has meant that, for example, that nucleus of a unit building a temple in Dulwich House was then able to take that and then grow and keep relations and then go back to Community Brain, who we were introduced to through them, and then build a practice out of it. And then through that, then start co-creating festivals with them.
It's kind of just like every idea is a good idea and you can make anything you want as long as, I don't know, you try. It just seems like a wonderful ethos. I think there's many architects with great philosophies, Takeshi being one of them, and who is, I think, doing great change.
The Stanley Picker Gallery show is partly to do with the kind of retrospective or reviewing what we've done so far for last 13 years with the Kingston students and also the local community, and but also look to the futures.
And the Picker ought to be a natural visit for everybody coming into Kingston. And I'm hoping that this exhibition will allow people who don't see an art gallery as their natural home to think the wall and the door are not impenetrable.